Norman was born at 12:58. I went into labor at 12:08. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Emily. I am a mom who loves home decor, thrifting, and a good DIY project. Today I wanted to share with you guys Norman's birth story. Norman is my second son, and he was born 7 months ago. I don't often do motherhood content like this, but it's something I would like to start sharing more about. Everybody has their own experiences, their own stories, their own journeys with pregnancy and birth, and they're all, I think, very personal, unique experiences. I was hesitant to share my story at first, I think because birth stories feel extremely personal, and at times I have felt like social media is not always the safest place to share motherhood things, especially something like a birth story. I don't know, there can be lots of judgment around your choices and decisions and people's different views on things, so I was hesitant to share, but now that some time has passed, I feel okay to share, and you guys also are always very supportive and kind. So without further ado, let me tell you guys Norman's crazy birth story. The week leading up to Norman's birth, I was having contractions here and there, but by contractions, I mean like just a lot of cramping. You know, like the very, very, very early contractions, or maybe you guys don't know. Before I feel like full labor starts for me, I was just getting like very crampy, almost like uncomfortable period cramps. And so I was having those for like every evening the week before Norman was born. Every evening we would text a friend of ours who was on call to come be with my firstborn son Olin whenever we went into labor. So every evening it was like, I am having, you know, cramping contractions, but nothing like crazy, but I know that like things can change quickly. And there was 3 nights that I was even being able to like time them, and they were maybe like 15 minutes apart. I would get these like, you know, a contraction, but very, very, very mild. And then every night when I would fall asleep, they would go away, and yeah, I would have my whole next day. And I never felt like I was really in labor, just those like very minor cramping, uncomfortable, strong Braxton Hicks. The night Norman was born, we went walking around the mall, trying, you know, doing all the things, trying to get this baby coming. This was actually his due date, so it was his due date. We went to the mall and walking around, and I was definitely having like, again, just the cramping, but they were starting to be like semi more regular, not just completely sporadic, but maybe like every, I don't know, 20 minutes, 15 minutes type thing. But again, I was in no way like I'm in labor because they were just so mild. To me, it was still just Braxton Hicks. Like, Braxton Hicks is when, actually, I don't know, I've never actually read a definition of what Braxton Hicks is, but what it feels like is when your stomach area all just like contracts and gets super tight and hard, and it's kind of like this uncomfortable feeling. I was having Braxton Hicks with a little bit of added cramping, but I had labor before, and I knew like this isn't really it. I went to sleep. We chose not to text our friend that night because I was like, this has happened like every night that I'm kind of like, be aware, like the baby could be coming, and we kind of felt like, okay, and then we go to sleep and nothing ever happens. So I was kind of like, you know what, I'm not even feeling that much. Nothing's really like progressing. So I went to sleep easily, but then at 12:08, I woke up because I felt a pop and literally was like, kind of like hit my husband sleeping next to me and was like, I think my water broke. So I stand up because I'm like, okay, I think my water broke. And as I'm like walking to the bathroom, I'm gushing, and I genuinely was like, okay, I'm either fully just uncontrollably peeing myself right now, or my water broke. My water didn't break with my first son, Olin, so I had never, they broke my water, so I did know that like water breaking, like pop feeling, but I didn't, I don't know, it was a different experience. I like sitting on the toilet like, okay, like my water broke and I didn't have any contractions, and I was like, okay, so I haven't had any contraction kick in yet, but I know that if your water breaks, you should go to the hospital. Like they should check you, you should go in even if you're not having contractions, because that's just what I had heard. So I actually tried to call the hospital like the first thing, like this is all within like 2 minutes, you know. I like tried to call the hospital, but I couldn't get through. I was like, whatever, forget it. I like didn't want to just like waste time on the phone, so I was like, okay, Stefan, like for real, tell our friend Matt was coming to be with Olin. Like it was the night, but coming to stay at the house. So I was like, okay, text Matt, tell him to come, like we're gonna go to the hospital. Maybe then within like 5 minutes, I then like felt a contraction, was like, okay, like that was like more of a contraction, actual contraction. So I think like Matt got to our house at like 12:20, 12:25 or something like that. So within the like 12:08 to 12:25, my contractions like all were rapidly like increasing in pain and everything. And as like my husband's, you know, like getting our stuff, just trying to quickly make sure everything we have in order, I am now starting to like really need to breathe through things. Matt comes and my contraction was, I was like having a few really strong ones. And so he comes and I was like, oh God, am I gonna have to like talk to somebody? So I kind of like say hi and like get my shoes on, and we have stairs going out of our basement suite, and Matt says that I like ran up the stairs. But in my brain, I was just like getting up the stairs as quickly as I could because I was so afraid that I would get a contraction while I was on the stairs. I don't know why, but I was like, that can't happen. So I make it to the car, and of course I think I have a contraction like right before we got in the car, and then right as we got in the car, and they were starting to get like very, very painful. Like I had an epidural with Olin, and that was my plan again, was to have an epidural with Norman. And so I had only, I guess you could say, like experienced labor up until a certain point, like pain wise, because then I got an epidural. We're talking about you, Norman. So we're in the car and contractions are now getting very, very strong. Like I felt like honestly the moment we got in the car, they just like kicked into high gear, and I was really shocked by them. I think because I had never experienced this like level of contraction. Maybe once we were halfway there, it's only 10 minutes away, I got the strong urge to push, and it really scared me. And I felt like everything went out the window. I hadn't experienced that like urge to push and that pain, and I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, like this baby is coming, like this baby is coming out. I'm afraid that if I'm like pushing, like it felt like he was just coming out. We're coming out. So my contractions were like a minute apart. I was having that crazy urge to push. Stefan is just like in go mode, get me to the hospital. Literally we were at one light. Stefan like saw a cop and was just like, dear God, do not let this cop for whatever reason like pull us over. So I'm like screaming, like losing my mind every time a contraction comes, like pushing. We never went and like checked out the hospital before. We had been to the emergency room at the hospital, but we had never like gone to where you're supposed to park like normally and then go in and like, you know, just know exactly where we're going. Stefan is just like, just determined to get there. So he like pulls up, he's like, is this where I'm supposed to go? Is this where I'm supposed to go? I'm like, you know, I don't even think I said anything. I don't remember. So he pulls up to like this random entrance and he sees a nurse like just nearby and she's smoking, and he just like jumps out and says to her like, can we get in like through this entrance? And he's like, my wife is in labor, and I'm just like sitting in the car screaming. She like goes over to the doors and like gets on the little talkie things and says, you know, like what, I don't know actually what she says. I was in the car, but they get the doors open and Stefan like gets me, I think in between contractions. I like walk in, and then all I remember is like we walk in and then a few steps in I get another contraction, and it was just like my first instinct was like to get down and just like I'm in squat position, like pushing and screaming, and then we have to like, then once the contraction passes, we make it down this hallway. I think I have another contraction, then we get in an elevator, get another contraction, go up, and then go back down and go down another hallway. So I had like a few contractions, and I'm like literally like, it's funny, it's not funny, but in hindsight you're just like, oh my gosh, like you would never behave, the boys are playing, sorry, in the background, but you would never like do that any other time, you know. But so we make it to the labor and delivery floor, which I barely remember, and I am like so vocal, and a nurse like comes up right up to me and she's like, blow it away, sweetie, blow it away, instead of like yelling, which I felt like, okay, I didn't know those things, but like felt like my instincts of how to handle labor was like, yeah, I know what I'm doing, but I had never experienced like that intense portion of labor, nor the like, was I prepared to feel like I needed to push while we were driving. So I think just like the, what do I do? Like, no, Emily, calm down and breathe. Like those things just like went away from me, and it was more just like, They quickly bring us into a room. I have my pants on and I'm like, can I take my pants off? And they're like, yes, yes. So we like take my pants off. It's all kind of just like a blur, but I get up on the table and they check me, and instantly everybody is like, okay, the baby's here. Like the baby's here. And they just were in like go mode. Like 4 or 5 nurses were just like throwing things around, trying to like get stuff ready. I still had my top on. There was a doctor who happened to be like on one other floor or something, who came right away because this was the middle, well, it was like midnight, so it's like the middle of the night. But there just happened to be a doctor there like right away, and like within a minute they were like, okay hun, you gotta push. They were telling me like that I needed I'm gonna like demonstrate. They were telling me like I needed to hold my own leg up, and I am like, with Olin, like, well, it was just such a different experience, but like I wasn't having to hold my own legs while I was pushing. So I think I had 1 contraction, and then I'm like, can we get the leg? I literally had lost my voice, but I'm like trying to say like, can we get those like leg holder things so I can like brace myself, you know, to push. And then the doctor lady was like, okay hun, it's like really important, the baby could be in distress, and I guess Norman had the cord wrapped around his neck, so they wanted me to get him out really quickly. So within 1 contraction, so I think I only had 2 like in the room or whatever. I pushed Norman out in like 1 contraction, and they like put him on my chest, and I still had my shirt on. Like I literally had my sweatshirt on, and they just like kind of like lifted up my sweatshirt, kind of got it off of me. I remember it had like blood on it and stuff, and I pushed out Norman. So Norman was born at 12:58. I went into labor at 12:08. So it was 50 minutes. A few things I forgot to mention was we literally had left the car running in this random spot, just like left it running. I think doors open. And like went inside. So our car was like still running. And I think Stefan had like gave somebody the keys to like go turn it off and like tell the security people and stuff like that. Stefan had also like asked my sweet husband, because he knew I wanted an epidural, like when we got there, and I'm like moments away, literally like one contraction away from pushing out Norman. He's like, can we get her an epidural? And they're like, no, hun, like the baby's here. Like, there's no time for an epidural. You're literally, we'll see your child in a moment. Then a little bit of what happened after. So after, Norman was okay, thank God. He was like fully fine and healthy, and he was laying on me. And then I had to wait for like, this was like the worst part. I had to wait for like 45 minutes laying there, legs in stirrups, like, and I was really like, if I'm just gonna be honest with you guys, I was like really in shock because I wasn't prepared for like a 50-minute labor. Olin's like whole labor was like 13 hours. But I wasn't prepared for like 50 minutes, you know, almost giving birth in the car. I was like very much in shock. And then I'm like laying there in pain, and you still get like those after contractions. The doctor that was there, I don't know if she's like a regular, I was actually kind of confused. I don't know if she was like a regular labor and delivery doctor, or if she's just like the doctor that was, honestly, I don't know. But they ended up wanting to wait to call in one of the main labor and delivery doctors who's on call that night to come in. So I think I waited like 45 minutes just laying there like wounded until the doctor would come. I did have a 2nd-degree tear, actually had a 3rd-degree tear with Olin, so it wasn't as bad. So they stitched me up, and that was honestly like really hard, and yeah, kind of like a really hard experience for me. I think because with Olin, I had an epidural and I didn't like feel any of that, and I didn't feel any of the like after contractions, but it was like really, I think I was just really in shock. And then to have to like lay there for 45 minutes, kind of just like in pain, you know, you're just kind of like hurts down there. And then they numb you as much as they can, but it's, I don't know, I still found it painful. And they numb you and then stitched me up, and then it's like, okay, let's get up and go pee. You're like, oh really? Okay. But obviously the crazy part is that within that time, like just like that, you have this little life who's now just like laying on you and feeding from you. Somebody you've been like waiting for 9 months is now here in your arms on you. And that is just the craziest thing. And for me, when I felt like this with Olin, and I felt like it with Norman, and this is my own personal experience, but for my babies, I always look at them and I do feel a little bit like, I don't know you yet. It's a lot to process. Of course, you do feel this like automatic love of like, you're mine, and I'm gonna like do everything in my power to love you and care for you and meet your needs. But for me, there's always also this feeling of like, I don't know you yet, and I can't wait to know you. And actually now, 7 months later, I can look at my birth differently because I now know Norman. Obviously we get to know him more and more as his little self grows and learns, but now I have like see that as like, oh, that was my little Normie. And when it first all happens, it's almost like, whoa, okay, who are you? You've been growing in me, who are you? And now I look at it as like, and that was my little Normie, and he just came so fast, and it's such a beautiful experience. And I think as crazy and hard and maybe a little traumatizing as my labor could have been, like, it's all worth it for your babies, who are just like the whole world. They're just everything. That is my crazy 50-minute birth story. I'm really glad that, obviously, other than tearing, like, there was no complications with Norman. He was perfectly healthy, and I feel like God really protected him. Like, who knows if we had had a long birth, if there would have been complications with him having the cord around his neck. I don't know, but because everything was so fast, he was just totally protected and healthy and whole. Anyways, that is my birth story. I hope you guys liked hearing it. Everybody's birth story is different. My first birth to this birth, very, very different. It's like the craziest experience I've ever been through in my life. And yet, you would do it again for your babies. You guys can leave a comment below. I don't know what about. Say hi. You can share your own birth story. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, feel free to give it a thumbs up. As always, you guys can subscribe for more of my everyday life. You can follow me on Instagram at EmilyFaith22. I hope you guys have a great day. I will see you next time.